Hare Hare. Nam Nam Hare Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare. Hare
Shaitan
Krishna.
Hare Krishna, dear devotees.
Hare
Jai Shri Prabhupada. Start with
Hare
Mangacharan.
Krishna.
ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरन्दस्य ज्ञानञ्जनशलाकय चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः। नमः ॐ विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिनिति नामिने। नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैता गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे, हरे कृष्णा. Okay, so as we always do after our chanting Shravana Kirtanam, we'll do Vandanam prayers, offering prayers to the Lord. So we are continuing with Sri Govinda Damodar Stotram by Shri Billamangal Thakur. Every week we have been doing 10 verses. So this week we'll start at 41 to 50. Okay, something, and then we'll read the translations. Atyantika vyadiharam jananam chikitsakam vedavido vadanti संसारतापत्रयनाशबीजं गोविन्ददामोदरमाधवेति ताताज्ञया गच्छति रामचन्द्रे स लक्ष्मणेरन्यचये ससीते चक्रन्दरामस्य निजा जनेत्री गोविन्ददामोदरमाधवेति एकाकिनी दण्डककनान् कनान्तात् सानीयमाना दशकन्धरेण सीता तदा क्रोशदनन्यनाथ गोविन्ददामोदरमाधवेति रामाद्वियुक्ता जनकात्मजा सा विचिन्तयति हृदि रामरूपम् रुरोद सीता रघुनाथ पाहि गोविन्द दामोदरमाधवेति प्रसीद विष्णु रघुवंशनाथ सुरासुराणां सुखदुःखहेतो रुरोद सीता तु समुद्रमध्ये गोविन्द दामोदरमाधवेति अन्तर्जले ग्राहगृहीतपादो विसृष्टविक्लिष्टसमस्तबन्धुः तदा गजेन्द्रो नितरां जगादा गोविन्द दामोदरमाधवेति हंसध्वजशङ्खयुतो ददर्श पुत्रं कटाहे प्रपतन्तमेनम् पुण्यानि नामानि हरे जपन्तं गोविन्द दामोदरमाधवेति दुर्वाससो वाक्यमुपेत्य कृष्णा सा चाब्रवीत्काननवासिनीशम् अन्तः प्रविष्टं मनसा जुहावा गोविन्द दामोदरमाधवेति ध्येयः सदा योगिभिरप्रमेयः चिन्ताहरश्चिन्तितपारिजातः कस्तूरिकाकल्पितनीलवर्णो गोविन्द दामोदरमाधवेति संसारिकूपे पतितोऽत्यगाधे मोहान्धपूर्णे विषयाभिताप्ते करावलम्बं मम देहि विष्णो गोविन्द दामोदरमाधवेति गोविन्द दामोदर माधवेति गोविन्द दामोदर माधवेति हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। श्री गोविंद दामोदर स्तोत्रम की जय। श्री बिल्वा मंगल ठाकुर की जय। श्री प्रभुपाद की जय। Anybody who can read the translations for 41 to 50?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, I can read.
Yes, please.
The knowers of Vedas say that this is the cure all of the worst diseases of mankind, and that this is the seed of the destruction of the threefold miseries of the material existence, Govinda, Damodara, and Madhava. Among Ramchandra's going into the forest due to his father's order, along with Lakshman and Sita, his mother cried, "O Govinda, Damodara, Madhava." Left there alone, Sita was carried out of the forest by the 10-headed Ravana. At that time, accepting no other lord, Sita cried, "O Govinda, Damodara, Madhava." Separated from Rama, the daughter of King Janaka was completely anxious, and with the form of Rama within her heart, she cried, "O Raghunath, protect me. O Govinda, Damodara, Madhava. O Lord Vishnu, be gracious. Lord of the Raghu clan, cause of the happiness and distress of gods and demons like. O Govinda, Damodara, Madhava." Thus Sita cried as she was being carried over the middle of the ocean. Caught by his foot and pulled into the water, Gajendra, his friends, all harassed and frightened away, then called incessantly, "Govinda, Damodara, Madhava." Along with his priest Shankayukta, King Hamsadwaja saw his son Sudavana falling into a vat. But the boy was chanting the transcendental names of Hari, Govinda, Damodara, and Madhava, accepting Durvasa Muni's request that she feed his many disciples. Though she hadn't the means, Draupadi mentally called out to the Lord from within her heart, the Lord of the forest dwellers. She said, "Govinda, Damodara, Madhava." He is always meditated upon by the yogis as being inscrutable. He is the remover of all anxieties, and he is the desire tree of all that is desired. His bluish complexion is as attractive as Kaustrika. Govinda, Damodara, Madhava. I am fallen into the deep, dark well of material life, which is full of illusion and blind ignorance, and I am tormented by sensual existence. O my Lord, Vishnu, Govinda, Damodara, Madhava, please grant me your supporting hand to uplift me. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much. Yes. So, as we see here, this material life is dark well, as it is mentioned here in the last one, full of illusion and blind ignorance. So similarly, this Western world, Paschatya Desh, is full of illusion, materialism, impersonalism, ignorance. And Srila Prabhupada comes here, just as Ramchandra comes with Lakshman Sita, Prabhupada comes with the holy name and the holy Bhagavatam as his companions across the seas. So let's see now the Srila Prabhupada will continue Srila Prabhupada Lilamrit. He has, last week we saw Prabhupada's move from New York City to California. So Prabhupada is going west because a couple of his disciples had moved there, Mukunda and Janaki Mataji. So they are now inviting Srila Prabhupada to come to California, and they opened a new temple there, new center of Shri Radha Krishna, and Prabhupada is preparing for his next Sadhu Sangha, right? So we already saw one Sadhu Sangha in New York, where he started Sankirtan movement at Tompkins Square Park, and of course that is in ISKCON, we consider that as the breaking ground where Prabhupada established the movement, right? That's where ISKCON was started in New York. So Prabhupada kind of, just like Ramchandra brought the seed of bhakti, Srila Prabhupada got the seed of bhakti and he planted it there in 26 Second Avenue in the Matchless Gifts storefront in New York City. And from there, the seed germinated and then it grew into this wonderful movement that it exists today all over the cities. From one city to others, it spread. So similarly, here Prabhupada is now getting ready to grow the branches of this particular tree in California. And just like we went to Sadhu Sangha and then we had Sadhu Sangha in a ballroom, now Prabhupada is going to have his next Sadhu Sangha Kirtan festival in a ballroom. And he's being assisted by Mukunda Prabhu and Janaki Mataji and their friends who so lovingly welcomed him in New York airport, in California airport in San Francisco. And just as that time we had issues, the counterculture, so many, the young people of America were disillusioned by the wars and conflicts going on in the world. It is very timely again. Prabhupada is arriving in California when we have all these protests going on in Los Angeles and other parts of California and US all over now with the immigration, and when people falsely consider, as themselves as the proprietor of the land, like Prabhupada says, then there will not be any peace. As long as we don't accept the Lord as the supreme proprietor, then there will be no peace. So there is a similar situation when Prabhupada came in 1966 to now when, he's coming now to California. So we'll continue reading what Prabhupada does in terms of leading this Hare Krishna Kirtan in California. Okay, so we'll read from here. On the night of the mantra, so it was called Mantra Rock Dance, is what they were planning to do. On the night of the Mantra Rock Dance, while the stage crew set up equipment and tested the sound system, and Ben and Roger were the two people who were helping them organize this festival in the ballroom, setting up all their musical system and the light and all of that. So Ben and Roger organized their light show upstairs. Mukunda and others collected tickets at the door. People lined up all the way down the street and around the block, waiting for tickets at $2.50 apiece. Attendance would be good, a capacity crowd, and most of the local luminaries were coming. LSD pioneer Timothy Leary arrived and was given a special seat on stage. Swami Kriyananda came, carrying a tambura, a man wearing a top hat and a suit with a silk sash that said San Francisco arrived, claiming to be the mayor. At the door, Mukunda stopped a respectably dressed young man who didn't have a ticket, but then someone tapped Mukunda on the shoulder. Let him in, it's all right. He's Owsley. Mukunda apologized and submitted, allowing Augustus Owsley Stanley too, folk hero and famous synthesizer of LSD, to enter without a ticket. Almost everyone who came wore bright and unusual costumes, tribal robes, Mexican ponchos, Indian kurtas, god's eyes, feathers, and beads. Some hippies brought their own flutes, lutes, guards, drums, rattles, horns, and guitars. The Hells Angels, dirty-haired, wearing jeans, boots, and denim jackets, and accompanied by their women, made their entrance, carrying chains, smoking cigarettes, and displaying their regalia of German helmets, emblazoned emblems, and so on, everything but their motorcycles, which they had parked outside. The devotees began a warm-up kirtan on stage, dancing the way Swamiji had shown them. Incense poured from the stage and from the corners of the large ballroom, and although most in the audience were high on the drugs, the atmosphere was calm. They had come seeking a spiritual experience. As the chanting began, very melodiously, some of the musicians took part by playing their instruments. The light show began. Strobe lights flashed. Colored balls bounced back and forth to the beat of the music. Large blobs of pulsing color spluttered across the floor, walls, and ceilings. A little after 8 o'clock, Moby Grape took the stage. With heavy electric guitars, electric bass, and two drummers, they launched into their first number. The large speakers shook the ballroom with their vibrations, and a roar of approval rose from the audience. Around 9:30, Prabhupada left his Frederick Street apartment and got into the back seat of Harvey's Cadillac. He was dressed in his usual saffron robes, and around his neck he wore a garland of gardenias, whose sweet aroma filled the car. On the way to the Avalon, he talked about the need to open more centers. At 10 o'clock, Prabhupada walked up the stairs of the Avalon, followed by Kirtanananda and Ranchor. As he entered the ballroom, devotees blew conch shells. Someone began a drum roll, and the crowd parted down the center, all the way from the entrance to the stage, opening a path for him to walk. With his head held high, Prabhupada seemed to float by as he walked through the strange milieu, making his way across the ballroom floor to the stage. Suddenly, the light show changed. Pictures of Krishna and his pastimes flashed onto the wall. Krishna and Arjuna riding together on Arjuna's chariot. Krishna eating butter. Krishna subduing the whirlwind demon. Krishna playing the flute. As Prabhupada walked through the crowd, everyone stood, applauding and cheering. He climbed the stairs and seated himself softly on a waiting cushion. The crowd quieted. Looking over at Allen Ginsberg, Prabhupada said, "You can speak something about the mantra." Allen began to tell of his understanding and experience with the Hare Krishna mantra. He told how Swamiji had opened a storefront on 2nd Avenue and had chanted Hare Krishna in Tompkins Square Park. And he invited everyone to the Frederick Street Temple. "I especially recommend the early morning kirtanas," he said, "for those who, coming down from LSD, want to stabilize their consciousness on re-entry." Prabhupada spoke, giving a brief history of the mantra. Then he looked over at Allen again. "You may chant." Allen began playing his harmonium and chanting into the microphone, singing the tune he had brought from India. Gradually, more and more people in the audience caught on and began chanting. As the Kirtana continued and the audience got increasingly enthusiastic, musicians from the various bands came on stage to join in. Ranchor, a fair drummer, began playing Moby Grape's drums. Some of the bass and other guitar players joined in as the devotees and a large group of hippies mounted the stage. The multicolored oil slicks pulsed, and the balls bounced back and forth to the beat of the mantra, now projected onto the wall. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. As the chanting spread throughout the hall, some of the hippies got to their feet, held hands, and danced. Allen Ginsberg. "We sang Hare Krishna all evening. It was absolutely great. An open thing. It was the height of the Haight-Ashbury spiritual enthusiasm. It was the first time that there had been a music scene in San Francisco where everybody could be part of it and participate. Everybody could sing and dance rather than listen to the other people sing and dance." Janaki. "People didn't know what they were chanting for, but to see that many people chanting, even though most of them were intoxicated, made Swamiji very happy. He loved to see the people chanting." Hayagriva. "Standing in front of the bands, I could hardly hear, but above all, I could make out the chanting of Hare Krishna. Building steadily, on the wall behind, a slide projected a huge picture of Krishna in a golden helmet with a peacock feather, a flute in his hand. Then Srila Prabhupada stood up, lifted his arms, and began to dance. He gestured for everyone to join him, and those who were still seated stood up and began dancing and chanting and swaying back and forth, following Prabhupada's gentle dance. Roger Siegel. "The ballroom appeared as if it was a human field of wheat blowing in the wind. It produced a calm feeling in contrast to the Avalon ballroom atmosphere of guiding energies. The chanting of Hare Krishna continued for over an hour, and finally everyone was jumping and yelling, even crying and shouting. Someone placed a microphone before Srila Prabhupada, and his voice resounded strongly over the powerful sound system. The tempo quickened. Srila Prabhupada was perspiring profusely. Kirtanananda insisted that the kirtana stop. Swamiji was too old for this, he said. It might be harmful, but the chanting continued, faster and faster, until the words of the mantra finally became indistinguishable amidst the amplified music and the chorus of thousands of voices. Then suddenly it ended. and all that could be heard was the loud hum of the amplifiers and Srila Prabhupada's voice ringing out, offering obeisances to his spiritual master. Om Vishnupada Paramhamsa Pravishacharya Ashtotara Shrimad Shrimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. Srila Prabhupada made his way off stage through the heavy smoke and crowds and down the front stairs with Ketananda and Ranchor close behind him. Alan announced the next rock group. As Swamiji left the ballroom and the appreciative crowd behind, he commented, "This is no place for a brahmachari." The next morning, the temple was crowded with young people who had seen Swamiji at the Avalon. Most of them had stayed up all night. Srila Prabhupada, having followed his usual morning schedule, came down at 7, held Kirtana, and delivered the morning lecture. Later that morning, while riding to the beach with Kirtanananda and Hayagriva, Swamiji asked how many people had attended last night's Kirtan. When they told him, he asked how much money they had made, and they said they weren't sure, but it was approximately $1,500. Half audibly, he chanted in the back seat of the car, looking out the window as quiet and unassuming as a child, with no indication that the night before he had been cheered and applauded by thousands of hippies who had stood back and made a grand aisle for him to walk in triumph across the strobe-lit floor amid the thunder of the electric basses and pounding drums of the Avalon ballroom. For all the fanfare of the night before, he remained untouched, the same as ever in personal demeanor. He was aloof, innocent, and humble, while at the same time appearing very grave and ancient. As Kirtanananda and Hayagriva were aware, Swamiji was not of this world. They knew that he, unlike them, was always thinking of Krishna. They walked with him along the boardwalk near the ocean with its cool breezes and cresting waves. Kirtanananda spread the chadar over Prabhupada's shoulders. In Bengali, there is one nice verse, Prabhupada remarked, breaking his silence. I remember. Oh, what is that voice across the sea calling, calling, come here, come here. Speaking little, he walked the boardwalk with his two friends, frequently looking out at the sea and sky. As he walked, he softly sang a mantra that Kirtanananda and Hayagriva had never heard before. Govinda Jaya Jaya, Gopala Jaya Jaya, Radharamana Hari, Govinda Jaya Jaya. He sang slowly, in a deep voice. As they walked along the boardwalk, he looked out at the Pacific Ocean. Because it is great, it is tranquil. The ocean seems to be eternal, Hayagriva ventured. No, Prabhupada replied. Nothing in the material world is eternal. In New York, since there were so few women present at the temple, people had inquired whether it were possible for a woman to join the Hare Krishna consciousness, join the Krishna consciousness movement. But in San Francisco, that question never arose. Most of the men who came to learn from Swamiji came with their girlfriends. To Prabhupada, these boys and girls, eager for chanting and hearing about Krishna, were like sparks of faith to be fanned into steady, blazing fires of devotional life. There was no question of his asking the newcomers to give up their girlfriends or boyfriends, and yet he uncompromisingly preached no illicit sex. The dilemma, however, seemed to have an obvious solution: marry the couples in Krishna consciousness. Because traditionally, a sannyasi would never arrange or perform marriages. By Indian standards, someone might criticize Prabhupada for allowing any mingling of the sexes. But Prabhupada gave priority to spreading Krishna consciousness. What Indian, however critical, had ever tried to transplant the essence of India's spiritual culture into the Western culture? Prabhupada saw that to change the American social system and completely separate the men from the women would not be possible. But to compromise his standard of no illicit sex was also not possible. Therefore, Krishna conscious married life, the Grihastha ashram, would be the best arrangement for many of his new aspiring disciples. In Krishna consciousness, husband and wife could live together and help one another in spiritual progress. It was an authorized arrangement for allowing a man and woman to associate. If as spiritual master he found it necessary to perform marriages himself, he would do it. But first, these young couples would have to become attracted to Krishna consciousness. Joanne Campanella had grown up in a wealthy suburb of Portland, Oregon, where her father was a corporate tax attorney. She and her sister had had their own sports cars and their own boats for sailing on Lake Oswego. Disgusted by the sorority life at the University of Oregon, Joanne had dropped out during her first term and enrolled at Reed College, where she had studied ceramics, weaving, and calligraphy. In 1963, she had moved to San Francisco and become the co-owner of a ceramics shop. Although she had then had many friends among fashionable shopkeepers, folk singers, and dancers, she had remained aloof and introspective. It was through her sister Jan that Joanne had first met Srila Prabhupada. Jan had gone with her boyfriend Michael Grant to live in New York City, where Michael had worked as a music arranger. In 1965, they had met Swamiji while he was living alone on the Bawari, and they had become his initiated disciples, Mukunda and Janaki. Swamiji had asked them to get married, and they had invited Joanne to the wedding. As the wedding guest for one day, Joanne had then briefly entered Swamiji's transcendental world at 26 Second Avenue, and he had kept her busy all day making dough and filling kachori pastries for the wedding feast. Joanne had worked in one room and Swamiji had worked in the kitchen, although he had repeatedly come in and guided her in making the kachoris properly, telling her not to touch her clothes or body while cooking, and instructing her not to smoke cigarettes because the food was to be offered to Lord Krishna and therefore had to be prepared purely. Joanne had been convinced by this brief association that Swamiji was a great spiritual teacher, but she had returned to San Francisco without pursuing Krishna consciousness further. Hare Krishna. Okay, we'll pause here today. We can take any reflections, any thoughts, anything anybody loved or learned from today's reading. It's good to see Prabhupada has come to San Francisco, and yeah, we read about Joanne when she came for the wedding, Mukunda and Janaki Mataji. And now she's, see, with that one small association of a day when she was there and helped Prabhupada make kachoris, knit the dough and make kachoris for the wedding feast. She was so deeply touched by Prabhupada's humility, sincerity, and his devotion that she remembers that one day in her life which transformed her. And yeah, Prabhupada performing kirtan, again, he's, while in this world everything is bad, like we say, it is, while we are in this world, we have to make the best use of the bad bargain. So while nothing is good in this world, dukkhalema shashvatam, but when we chant the holy names of the Lord, we can, even while living in this world, we can make the place where we live as Vaikuntha, as the Lord's abode. Because wherever the chanting of the holy names is performed, the Lord eternally resides there. So similarly, Prabhupada, even though this particular the Avalon ballroom where we had the kirtan, they had all these hippies and everybody coming there. Prabhupada saw that, again, as long as people can come and chant, that is better than what they were doing, enjoying all those other rock concerts. So by adding the Hare Krishna mantra to the rock concert, it became the mantra rock concert. And so while Prabhupada did that, yet yeah, while walking out, he saw, of course, the crowd who was there was not best dressed, of course. You may have seen on TVs or heard, how people are kind of crazy and wild in these concerts. So while walking out, he still says it is not the right place for brahmacharis. But just as he says, in this world, while we are here, we, just by adding Hare Krishna mantra, just by making these hippies into couples, by bringing them into Grihastha it is a better way of life than just kind of rotting as hippies and having illicit relationships, illicit sex with each other. So he was trying to bring them gradually, step by step, to the higher platform. It was not possible to raise them directly to the spiritual platform, but one step at a time, he was just trying to elevate their consciousness by elevating them materially in the first place. Yes, any other reflections, any other thoughts for today's reading? Hare Krishna. Pawan Prabhuji, good to see you again. Thank you for joining and chanting with us. this morning. Okay, anybody else would like to say anything? If not, then we'll conclude here for today and then we'll continue again tomorrow. Okay, so then we'll conclude with Vaishnava Pranam prayers. वाञ्छकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। अनंत कोटि वैष्णवृंद की जय। जगतगुरु
जय
श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय। श्रील प्रभुपाद लीलामृत की जय। निताई गौर प्रेमानंदे। हरि हरि बोल। हरे कृष्णा।
Hare Krishna, Hare Bol, everyone.
हरे कृष्ण
हरे
Hare
कृष्ण।
Krishna.